taking your time. Really looking forward to our talk. Yuri, why don't you just start off introducing yourself, because you're the first time on my show. I read your article, and Stefanie as well. And we were just really super, not only excited, but really it was fascinating, your articles. And you have a bunch of content, I know, on podcasts, your own podcast and your other articles. I haven't read all of them. So I just want to tell you, I'm really super fascinated by your articles, and it aligns with a lot of values and with the essence of Bitcoin. So
Yes,
please
thank you
introduce
for
yourself.
inviting. Thank you for inviting. Yeah, and happy to hear the feedback. So definitely feels like I'm not doing it for no reason. And to give you a short introduction, I got into Bitcoin about late 2012. Before that, I wasn't really into Bitcoin, anything with finance, anything with economics. I actually didn't know pretty much anything about it. So everything I know right now is actually thanks to Bitcoin, right? So as they say, Bitcoin born, molded by Bitcoin, made by it completely. And yeah, before my background was completely different. I studied linguistics back in Russia, and then I think I read a bit about Bitcoin somewhere. Like a lot of people dismissed it at first, and then it started popping up more and more on my screen because I'm more of a nerdy type, so I like to get into technology and learn about new things and hang around about with computer programmers and other nerds, so to speak. And I really got into it. There was in Vancouver, in Canada, I found a group of people, and there was literally 3, 4 people meeting every week to discuss Bitcoin. And that's how I started going there and learning. That was the original Bitcoin group in Vancouver, which obviously grew as time went and as the price went, which correlates a lot. Yeah, and I just really thought this was something not just interesting, but something life-changing, probably, as I started learning more about economics and finance, and I learned about how the world actually works. Not every facet of life, but at least the economic side of it, which is quite important because pretty much everything that we have right now, the situation in the world hinges upon the economy that we have and hinges upon the economic system that we have, which I personally consider outright fraudulent, right? Just like many other Bitcoiners. So this was a big eye opener, and obviously I decided to, you know, uh, get my hands on Bitcoin, not in terms of buying it, but maybe trying to do something with it as well. And the first thing, the lowest hanging fruit for me personally, was just pure and simple brokerage. Helping people buy and sell a little bit here and there. At the same time, as this progressed, I wanted to start a more serious business, and this is how I started a Bitcoin ATM company in Canada called the Honey Badger. That right now is actually one of the largest networks, Bitcoin ATM networks in Canada. Um, I exited it in 2018, and also I spent some time with Binary Financial, just doing some high profile brokerage deals, so to say. And by the end of that period, I decided that I wanted to branch off and focus specifically on Bitcoin brokerage and Bitcoin only brokerage, nothing else, a pure Bitcoin company. And I wanted to build something that was built not horizontally like a lot of other companies build when they just list lots and lots of other coins, other, blockchains. I wanted to build something horizontally on the Bitcoin platform using all Bitcoin technologies, like layer 1, layer 2 technologies and something in between. And that's how I got interested in other things like the Liquid network and the Lightning network. So right now, long story short, I run a Bitcoin brokerage business called Bitcoin Reserve, and I also write and I do my podcast Citadelium, which talks about Bitcoin and the possible future scenarios in which citadels spring up in the world and pretty much replace the current nation states.
Sounds great.
That's great.
Yeah, he's there.
So, yeah, I'm still here. Yeah, I'm sorry. I just had to turn off my video because of bandwidth issues. So, Yuri, we want to talk about your article, your excellent article, Bitcoin is a tool for secession. And there's one sentence right in the first paragraph that really caught my attention and, you know, aligns. I think I speak for Stefanie too, you know, with the essence of Bitcoin, you know, and the philosophy behind Bitcoin. You say in your article, throughout history, protests, revolutions, and civil wars proved to be ineffective against state tyranny. And so would you say, Yuri, that Bitcoin is truly the first tool, or whatever you want to call it, like the first tool, the first evolutionary tool that, you know, makes us not, you know, not to go into this direction again, you know, not into revolutions, you know, not to repeat things again, but to, you know, evolve for the first time and do it peacefully, you know, as peacefully as possible, and transition into a new era. I don't know if you want to add something, Stefanie, to that, to my question, but you know where I'm going with this, maybe.
That's fine. Go ahead, Yuri. I'm curious.
Yeah, well, as we like to say, fix the money, fix the world, right? And this is a very powerful phrase because, as I just mentioned in my introduction, a lot of the problems that we have right now in the world are caused by this fraudulent financial system that we have that is essentially based on the fiat standard, the standard of fiat money, which is issued by bureaucrats that no one elects, yeah, with a with a click of a button can print trillions of dollars as they have been doing in the recent months. And this kind of shows that the world cannot be run by just a few people in dark suits who think that this or that can be managed, you know, supply and demand and basic market forces can be managed by people. And I think they actually don't think that too. That's why they are really headed into things like AI and stuff like that to kind of, you know, help them manage all that economy, so-called maybe resource-based economy, as some people called it in the past. But what I think Bitcoin provides is that it gets us back to a universal monetary standard that was not possible before. Before it was gold that was the standard around the world, and right now. Right now, we see that it's really difficult to get back to gold. There have been lots of news about the gold market being heavily manipulated, and it's no wonder, obviously, that a lot of the gold stashes are in the hands of central banks themselves, who are able then to manipulate the prices of gold all over the world by dumping on the market large quantities of gold if for some reason regular people start collecting gold and increasing its price due to shortened demand, due to shortened supply. But with Bitcoin it's a little bit different. I think we live in the 21st century right now, and there is a lot of innovation going on, and now we have the internet. So we essentially invented a version of gold that is supercharged by the capabilities of the internet. And those capabilities are its transportability, right? You can transfer gold anywhere, this digital gold, Bitcoin, anywhere in the world right now in a peer-to-peer fashion without relying on any third party. So with a click of a button, you can transport it over a communications channel. That's what the internet provides. Then censorship resistance, which is basically the absence of any third parties and absence of a pressure by any third party on your transactions. If you hold your private keys for Bitcoin, you're able to transfer it anywhere in the world, and no one can tell you you cannot do that. They can try, and they will try, but they can't really do anything about it. Of course, a lot of people argue that there will be all kinds of attacks done by the state, such as speculative attacks or what's called custody attacks. For example, a good example would be, let's say, PayPal and Coinbase and all the large Bitcoin companies and like the funds like GPTC. They collect a huge amount of Bitcoins, and then basically they will not release these Bitcoins from their vaults. They will just kind of keep them as in their own ecosystem, and they will allow people to transact in Bitcoin, but essentially it won't be really Bitcoin because people will not hold their private keys. It will be more like a PayPal transactions where numbers in the database, in a centralized database, move rather than on the actual decentralized database, which is the blockchain. Um, I think this is the main premise here. The premise is that we now have a tool that cannot be controlled by the people who created the fraudulent system. They may use it because Bitcoin does not discriminate. They may use it, and I'm sure they are already using it, and they will use it even more in the future. But they will not be able to do what they did with gold. They will have to basically play by the rules of Bitcoin, and Bitcoin, I think, has the best rules. It has the best monetary policy out there, and I think Satoshi really envisioned the future in which the game theoretic aspects of Bitcoin prevail over anything that we have right now. So that's why I think it's extremely important.
Yeah, sounds awesome. So I may add something. What I see that Bitcoin also provided, apart from like the technical functionalities, it really brought a paradigm shift with it. So the people started to think, okay, what is money? It's really like in school, you're not really taught what money is, or you're getting taught a false version on how new money is created, that it would be transferred, which it is not. It's created out of thin air. And you are going deeper and deeper into the rabbit hole, then you realize, okay, the financial system is fraudulent. And then you're going even further and you're questioning the state. And you're questioning the whole system that we live in. And as such, you realize that this system as it is, it doesn't serve the individual person, but in fact, it serves a small elite. And this is the point where you then don't agree with the system anymore. So this is kind of the rabbit hole process most Bitcoiners go through. And there are like more and more people now going through this rabbit hole. It can be like Bitcoin can be a starting point, or like other things like medical system or whatever. There are like so many things where you can do a deep dive, where when you dive deep enough, you realize, okay, there's something fishy going on. But this is how Bitcoin really opened the way for quite many people to like wake up. And as Mohe Rothbard said so nicely, the state or the government as it is only can survive when it has the permission, the active or the passive permission by the people. And I think this is actually the great thing that Bitcoin brought with it, or one of the great things, because then this whole structure loses legitimization and then cannot sustain itself and will crumble.
Yes, exactly. And you made a good point here that Bitcoin, for a lot of people, including myself, Bitcoin serves as a starting point and opens doorways to many other different rabbit holes. And as you mentioned, it can be the medical system, it can be the food pyramid, it can be the sports, the TV and entertainment, and all of that stuff. It is for the most part, I actually think run by pretty much the same or at least similar interests and interest groups, right? Who have a more or less kind of unified uh, way of looking at the world and looking at the populations of the world, who for them are pretty much as Morpheus explained in the Matrix, a battery, right? They basically just need their energy to feed off of the populations, and they devise all kinds of ways to do so. And the current economic system is one of the major ways, because if you're able to extract people's value, people's fruits of labor through the monetary policy, then you can rule pretty much anything. the famous phrase by Rothschilds, right? Give me the power to rule the monetary system, and I care not who writes the law, right? So things like that, I think they are very important to understand, and that's why I think it's extremely important to orange peel people into this thing, to give them to explain to them why at least learning about how the world works in terms of the monetary policy right now and why Bitcoin is different. But at the same time, I believe that a lot of the people are not interested in it, even if you provide them with the facts. So personally, I do not really spend my energy educating the vast masses. I would rather provide my contact for people who are ready to listen, right? And there's not a lot of people like that, but at the same time, you must understand that it is not the masses that usually change things around in the world. It is usually very few dedicated individuals who create these paradigm shifts and whom the masses follow. So in simple terms, and as some religious and spiritual leaders say, people usually need a shepherd, and then who that shepherd is, that's the question, right? So right now, I think a lot of the time, very very often, the shepherd is not a good person. It's these financial elites, and all kinds of elites that are not very good people. They don't have the best of humanity in their mind, right? So I think this is what Bitcoin uh, uh, gives to the rest of us. It's pretty much an equalizer. It gives us an equal opportunity to start competing with these elements in our society and showing them that the human spirit, the human ingenuity is well alive. And if you provide us a level playing field, then we can show you that we can also compete very, very well and create our own systems that can be operational in complete parallel to your system, right? Completely independent from your system, and there is absolutely nothing you can do about it.
All right. I'm not sure if Kevin is there, so then
Yeah,
continue.
yeah,
All right.
that was excellent. I'm here. So Yuri, you've also somewhat elucidated about the free private cities or citadels. We had talks together with Stefanie, with Jeff Booth, and and the author of Price of Tomorrow: Why Deflation is the Key to an Abundant Future, and with Titus Gebel, who founded the Free Private Cities. So actually, I think has just started with 1 or 2 or 3 projects. The state as a territorial monopolist on violence, aggression, coercion. I mean, every criminal deed and act you can think of. I don't think it hasn't felt the threat of Bitcoin yet. So it's about to come. So there are some people, even in the more prominent. I think I even heard Gary Vee, the social media marketing guru. I don't think he understands Bitcoin, but he says that he thinks that definitely the states are going to ban it, and especially countries like China, Russia, and a couple of other countries, who are known, for their, very severe, oppressive and surveillance, panopticon, George Orwell style regimes. Where do you see this going? I mean, what's the process? Is it are we going like more and more into localized, more and more decentralized, granular, decentralized free private cities, where we can, evolve into deflationary economics, defend ourselves with higher grade, technological defense technologies? I mean, what's the practicality of it? Where do you see us in 10 years from now? Are we going literally to fight against the state, or the central banks who have criminal immunity over everything?
Yeah, well, I think the heavy lifting will be done by Bitcoin itself because of its game theoretic properties, and by that I mean Bitcoin is essentially designed to pump forever. That's the so-called number go up technology of Bitcoin, right? So it is a deflationary currency in terms of that it's gonna absorb more and more assets into it, and it's gonna grow up in value. And that means that it doesn't matter who you are. You can be a politician, you can be a CEO of a large company like Michael Saylor of MicroStrategy, you can be just a regular guy from the street. You will be interested in Bitcoin, and you will be interested in getting some Bitcoin. So I am very, very confident that right now a lot of politicians already have exposure to Bitcoin. Russian politicians, Chinese politicians, US politicians, you name it. And that's the game theory behind Bitcoin. Do they want to shoot themselves in the foot by outright banning Bitcoin? I don't think they do. So obviously there's close to 200 countries in the world. So some countries may experiment with completely banning Bitcoin. Like I think it has been done in countries like Ecuador. But others will see the benefit of not banning Bitcoin, but maybe do some kind of a um, partial regulations, right? They will be like Russia, for example, is not discussing banning Bitcoin outright, but they are discussing uh, not allowing people to use Bitcoin as a payment method, right? So that Bitcoin is not does not compete with the Russian ruble as a payment method, but you still are able to store and to hold Bitcoin for yourself, right? Basically as an investment. What does that mean? Well, that probably means that Russian politicians already have some Bitcoin and they don't want to ban it so that they can get caught themselves, right? And they don't want to spoil their own lives, but at the same time they don't really care about spending it in stores. So they're like, well, we're gonna ban it, we don't care about spending it, so we're just ban at least the spendability of Bitcoin on the territory of Russia. And so like that there will be many different options, many different variants of Bitcoin bans and Bitcoin regulations. But at the same, but you must understand that I don't think they will be able to actually completely ban it, simply because Bitcoin will keep going up and more of them will have to have exposure to Bitcoin. But when we talk about the resistance to the state, obviously it's not an easy task, and I don't see Bitcoin as being that singular savior of humanity. There are a bunch of people who think that, well, all we need to do is just stack some Bitcoins, sit tight, and essentially Bitcoin will do the job for us, right? We just spend a few years, sitting in our bunkers, and the Bitcoin economy will do its magic, and the state will suddenly disappear, and that's it. The elites are gone, and we can enjoy our Bitcoin future. But I don't think it's that simple. The thing is that the people who are at the top of this power structure of this pyramid, they have been there for decades, if not centuries, right? And um, it's not like they are ready to give up their reins so easily. I think they will do their best to resist it, and they are already doing it, I believe. We have seen a bunch of attacks on Bitcoin, whether political or speculative or otherwise, and I think they were not coincidental, and I don't think they were very, I don't think it was just a bunch of ignorant people deciding that they want to rule Bitcoin and that's it. I think it was fairly coordinated, and that was only the beginning. Gladly, Bitcoin came out even stronger from these attacks, and but we can't guarantee that none of this will happen again. More and more things will happen again. What I mean is that. Having Bitcoin is great, and we should all have it, and is the first step towards liberty and freedom. But you have to also take care to work on other facets of your life, and those are things like personal defense systems. It's food production, and there's work on your mind, work on your body, all kinds of things. Work on your family, right? Raise the next generation that will be not as brainwashed as the previous one, right? There's many different things that you can do to actually prepare for that good future, because it's not going to come by itself, and Bitcoin is not an organic entity that actually thinks, right? That can read your mind and that will bring this beautiful future for you. It's still up to individuals themselves who hold Bitcoin. Um, when you ask me what I see in 10 years, I don't think that in 10 years we will have hundreds or thousands of these citadels and free private cities around the world, because the process is not very swift. Yes, hyperinflation may be a swift process, but we can already see all the signs that there is another financial system in the pipeline. They are already calling it, right. They are saying, okay, it's going to be the great reset and things like that. So it's not like they don't have a plan for it. Obviously, they know that the fiat system can't go on forever, so they have to repackage it and remodel it and do all kinds of things like debt forgiveness and things like that to create a new system, which is not obviously going to be better than the old system. As a matter of fact, it will be much worse, because it will give them a lot more power in terms of surveillance capabilities and other things and tracking. But so it's not going to be very easy, and we have to do a little more than that. That's why I believe that maybe in the first stages of it, there will be two economies existing in parallel. The first one is a compliant Bitcoin economy, and the second one is a non-compliant Bitcoin economy. So the non-compliant one will be essentially the what's called the black market today, but you have to remember that the black market is actually a very large piece of the market, right? For example, in Greece, 30% of the whole GDP is black market, right? It's a huge piece of it, and Russia's the same. A lot of the market is black or gray, so it's just going to be people who say, well, I don't want to do this like KYC AML stuff and provide my KYC documentation when I want to buy a piece of bread with my Bitcoin. I'm just not gonna do it, and suddenly you have the black market for bread and Bitcoin, right? So it's very simple, but um, so this process is very long, and the elites, they will do their best, and it will take a lot of effort to actually defeat them. So I think uh, at first we'll have these two economies coexisting, but slowly but surely over the next decades, I think this black market and the free economy will consume the old economy, because purely because of incentives, right? The individuals, the people, they will see that, well, those guys that don't comply, they actually have a kind of maybe a better life. Yeah, it seems like it's illegal not to do so, right, what they are doing, but nothing really happens either, because it's Bitcoin. It really can't be controlled that much as a centralized fiat currency, right? So they're just going about their life, just like right now people on Craigslist trade day and night, and no one no one does any harm to them, right? It's this economy exists and has always existed. So I think the non-compliant Bitcoin economy will slowly suck the life out of the compliant one, and uh, eventually, over some time, the whole economy will just be one Bitcoin economy, and with that will come all kinds of market rather than government solutions to all kinds of problems. And free private cities and citadels is one solution to such a problem. In this case, the solution to a problem of living together, essentially, right? Like Titus Gebel likes to call it, the market of living together will evolve, and that's what I see happening as well. But even by his experience, you can see that, just simply annexing a piece of land and calling it your country is not going to work right now, because the states have a lot of resources, they have a lot of power, they have all the military, and they will crush you in one day. You can't fight a fight that you cannot win. So you have to fight your fight a little bit on a different scale, probably with a longer term horizon and with a different means. Bitcoin is one such means.
Yeah, you made some excellent points, especially, especially what's regarding the skin in the game, because there are a lot of politicians or political decision makers, and especially the daughters and sons, the younger generation, whether you call them millennia or whatever, generation X or whatever they're called. So they're already fully skin in the game, and they have, bought into Bitcoin. So they're already, they're in this game already. There was something else I was going to tell, but Stefanie, did you want to add something to that?
Yeah, actually, just an hour ago, I posted something on Twitter, like how the libertarian principle treats land property. And they say that land becomes one's property as soon as one has put some work into it, some transformative work. Let's say you are doing some agriculture and you're using this land to plant some wheat, for example, then this becomes your land. Or when you build your house on that and have your garden, then this is also becoming your land because you're putting the work into it. And this also means that you cannot say that all these hectares just belong to me right now because I say so and because I apply people to protect it when I'm not using it. And I thought this was very interesting on how a natural order would evolve in terms of land property, and this very much goes together with the free private cities and citadels. But of course, right now we have the state, which is a territorial monopolist that uses his monopoly on violence to preserve its power over the certain territory. And of course, it doesn't work, as you said, right now, but it's important to have in mind how it would be in a normal order. This is why I wanted to press this right now, on that we can have a vision on how a normal order without a state would look like, where people are free and where because the land is kind of for everyone. We don't have like so many people that there wouldn't be the possibility for everyone to have some space. I mean, right now we have this already, and there's like so much land which is not used. So this is not so much of an issue. And I think many people don't have this in the back of their mind, but it's important to know how it would be normally. So I also agree with you that I don't think that the state will continue to have its power as it has right now. I think Yuri is gone, but I just continue nevertheless, right? I think some internet problem. Okay, so I'm also not hearing you, Kevin.
Yeah, I'm sorry.
Yeah, because
I was muted. No, I think he's going to be back. I think he has the same bandwidth issue like in my case. So I think he's just going to come back. But
yeah, so I agree that the state will lose its power. I mean, we have to also think, what is a state? We can have a minimal state where the state focuses on preserving some kind of law structure. But there are actually contradictions between the state and law structure. So the state would need to preserve that the property of its citizens are not harmed. But on the other side, the state claims taxes, which is a dispossession. So the state, as we know it, doesn't, there are contradictions, it just doesn't fit, it's parasitic, as Yuri said. So, and right now we have a state that was like growing very, very large. So I'm curious how it will develop. I thought that there would be like radical split-offs in parallel societies. That is what I was saying in March. But right now I see it more likely that we actually have a reduction of the state. Many people think like, how can you say this right now when we went so totalitarian? But there's a lot of things happening in the background. When you do a lot of research and look really closely, you can see some of these things, but there are even in alternative news, you don't see so much of that. So it will be a great surprise, I think, in the next month for us to see. And I think we will have a reduction of state actually. And then there are like many possibilities opening up. I mean, Markus Krall said this, that we kind of have this minimal state when there is the option to do secessions and make even smaller states. And then you have at least a competition between states. So this is also already an advantage. It's already a little bit better. But I'm certainly on the side to completely transcend the state. So because the state, I consider the state as a construct where a few people can impose their will on the West, essentially, because they can decide the rules. And this is what I consider as a state. So and in the free private cities, it's different, or it can be different. I mean, there can be some that have a state kind of form, but there can be some where you have a bilateral contract where the government service provider, or let's say the Citadel service provider, because it's really not a government as we know it, and they say, okay, we protect your life, liberty, and property. So they just have some security. And then they have some courts in the back, or they just offer it. That could also like really come from the private market as well. But there is at least something on how to like make sure that some kind of order is followed. And of course, there would be also kind of a rule set. So of course, you cannot steal, the property of the other has to be preserved, these kind of things. And you sign it, and then you enter the free private city, and then you have to obey to these rules. And any free private city can have different rules, but they cannot be changed by like a small party. But they would need to be changed with everyone in a bilateral contract. And this is the super huge difference between free private city, where there is a service provider who only provides the service of security and nothing more. There's no imposition of will. And this is the great difference to a government and also a minimal state. And this is also the reason why I say this is where what is good, or what is the best for the people, for the freedom of the people, because this is not an input where someone imposes their will, and it's also not parasitic.
Yeah, that, excellent discussion point, because we talked with Markus Krall and Thorsten Polleit, and Thorsten Polleit, I know you also, Stefanie, you read his book, and with Money to World Dominance. I mean, it's a German title, but he's saying sort of that everything that the government is supposed to deliver or to provide, actually a private contractual service provider can do that much, much, much better, especially in the deflationary economics rooted in a hardest and scarcest money, Bitcoin. People can't even fathom, they can't even imagine that we can have an abundant civilization society where services and products get better and better, more innovative, and we don't even actually need any kind of, state-based entities, whether it be judicial, executive, or legislative. I mean, what's your take on that, Yuri?
Well, yeah, I completely agree. I mean, I pretty much agree with what at least Titus Gebel described in his book, Free Private Cities, and what Hans Hermann Hoppe described in Democracy, the God That Failed, one of my favorite books too. This is where it all leads, because at the end of the day, it's quite obvious, and that's the main talking point of all Austrian economists, is that the vast majority, if not all, services are better provided by the private market, by the free market, rather than by the state. And this can be clearly demonstrated in absolutely any country you go, whether it's the United States or Russia. Anything that's done by the government is complete nonsense. It's total trash, pretty much, compared to anything done by private individuals, by private enterprise. And I'm not talking about private enterprise that is in bed with the government. That's already more a bit about crony capitalism, these large corporations that are right now participating pretty much in the so-called Great Reset. They are, not really part of the free enterprise, right? They are already quite in bed with the government. They are subsidized by the government, and they do the bidding of the government in many respects. However, the little guy, the medium-sized guy, so to speak, the actual private market that's out there. Those are the guys that can, I think, change a lot of things. And when it comes to the market of living together, of course, it's the same premise, right? It's let's take a bunch of places, and let's make this place with these rules and this place with these rules, and see whichever works better. You can have your communist citadel, and you can have your free market citadel, and I'm sure in a couple of years it will be completely clear which one actually prevails, right? Obviously the latter. But what we want to see, of course, is a world of tens of thousands of these citadels rather than a world of a couple hundred states that are managed pretty much by the same circles of elites and financial interests, but this is a process, and it has to start somewhere. And I think actually right now the way my thought process goes is that it's quite impossible to start right now today to just grab land and hope that the state is not going to touch you for that, right? They're going to destroy you right away. But we already have certain tools like the internet and Bitcoin. And what we can start is what I like to call digital citadels, these digital communities in digital countries. And they are not just simply interest-based groups. Like, it's not a ping pong group or a dog lovers group. It's an actual group that has individuals that share the same values and cultural norms and maybe even language or whatnot, but they share more broad kind of features among themselves, right? And they can live in different parts of the world. They can be from anywhere, as long as they share a basic set of principles and rules, and they follow those um, to the T. And if someone decides to break those rules, they get expelled, essentially. So this can be a good start for building a citadel in the cloud, a digital citadel. And that's, I think a lot of people actually look for these kind of things, and I can already see some of these digital citadels appearing online. And I am invited to some of them too, and it's very interesting to see, because people start realizing that we can create our own parallel societies that do not comply, that do not follow the same standards and rules that the mainstream society is following right now. And I think it's very important, because at some point, if you get a bunch of, let's say, Bitcoiners form a parallel society, then in 10 years, these bunch of Bitcoiners will be a bunch of very, very wealthy people. And these very wealthy people will be able to uh, provide all kinds of resources to actually make a real physical citadel real, right? To make it happen, to build it. And how will that happen? No one can know, but various scenarios can happen. For example, some small African or Caribbean country goes through hyperinflation, and for them, and the leaders of this country really, really want to get their hands on some Bitcoin, but no one wants their currency. No, they have no resources. They only have fish around them, right? Because they're on an island. So, and then the Bitcoiners come in and say, hey, well, you have a bunch of these islands that you don't use really, right? Give them to us, but don't lease them to us. Don't sell them to us and keep the dominion over these islands. Actually sell them to us and declare them as not yours anymore. Like, literally, they become ours, and we can build our own country on those islands, right? And I bet that within a couple of decades, such cases will start appearing, and people will and these citadels will appear. Maybe not in Russia. Russia is still a huge and very kind of strong and centralized country, right? Like, there's still this fight between Russia and Japan over some islands next to Japan, right? That none of them want to cede to each other. And that's why Russia and Japan still haven't signed a peace agreement since the Second World War. They're still technically at war, but just because of those islands, right? So Russia understands that if it gives up those islands, then China will come and says, hey, we want part of Siberia. Then someone else will come and say, hey, we want part of this and part of that. So, but if you take this small countries somewhere in the Caribbean or the Indian Ocean, or some African maybe continents, such a thing I think is quite possible, because a lot of them are already quite corrupt, right? And they literally exist based on certain business models, like offshore company registrations, and being unregulated financial sectors, which I am in favor of, obviously. Regulation does not bring anything positive, really. But that's what I'm saying. These scenarios are pretty realistic, and they become realistic only thanks to Bitcoin, because as myself and some others in the Bitcoin community, we actually think that if Bitcoin were not around right now, our future may be a little bit darker than it could be, right? At least now we have a chance. Now we have a Bitcoin is our light at the end of the tunnel, essentially, and we are really, really happy that it's here. So we, as a generation, see ourselves as this a part of this kind of important history, right? History may turn around thanks to Bitcoin, and we are part of that history. And our goal, our purpose in life is to make that happen, to use Bitcoin as a tool for secession from the old paradigm and into the new one.
I agree with you, and we have this one shot. I mean, there's I think even Jeff Booth said in one of his last interviews, he said that if they really try to ban or regulate self-custody of your own Bitcoin, I mean, the first thing he would do, he would just emigrate, or take his stuff with his family and just go to another country, whether it be Portugal or any other country. So we're going to see, I think, more. I think it's called jurisdictional arbitrage or localized economies, or as you're describing, there might be more and more small. Well, I've just read about Venezuela and Iran. They're now, if I don't know if that's a rumor or really an official report, that they're already started exchanging Bitcoin for trade, right? So it doesn't matter. Iran has already started paying or actually mandating the official Bitcoin miners in Iran, at a specified price that they're going to buy from them Bitcoin, so in order to circumvent the sanctions and embargoes. So a lot of things are taking place, not only on geopolitical, economical, but I feel especially technological level. And I think we're going to get into that from store of value to medium of exchange phase much faster than we can even imagine. I mean, the things that are right now happening, it's mind blowing. So yeah, Stefanie, did you want to ask something?
Yeah, so I also read your article on monarchy. So I'm not sure if I understood this correctly, how you understand this, like monarchy in a free private city. So I already laid out that I consider this service provider of the Citadel is not being able to impose its will onto the people. So there's like a bilateral contract. And so this is not what I understand as monarchy, because I understand monarchy as, again, a small group of people, maybe like one king and the princess or whatever, imposing their will on the rest. I agree with you that this is certainly better than democracy, where it's like a competition for the worst, as we learn from Hans Hermann Hoppe. But nevertheless, the monarchy has this principle that some people impose their will on others. If they continue to do this over a too long time, there will be kind of a revolution. This is different with democracy because it's only a limited time. So this is kind of one of the reasons why a monarchy has some superior features. So what I definitely would say, I mean, there are people who would like to experience this, or would also like to experience communism, and they can do so in their free private city, or in, well, it shouldn't be called free, in their citadel. And then they see how it is like, and then when I don't see that's not what I want, then they can go out. So I'm totally fine with this. But I was a little bit confused how you understand this, and if, yeah, maybe you can elaborate a little bit on this.
Yeah, and I think there's two sides of it. The first one is a bit technical, and the second one is more philosophical. So the technical side of it is that obviously, taken to its logical conclusion, the world of citadels, in which every single citadel is private, run by either a private corporation or private individual who owns the citadel and provides services to the people, and people pay a subscription fee to that service. That's kind of the ultimate logical conclusion of this, right? Where we want it to be headed. But we all understand also, grounded in realism a little bit, is that the complete ideals are very, very hard to reach sometimes. And usually what happens in the world in the real life is sort of a mixture of something, right? And not a complete ideal. And when we talk about monarchy, monarchy is one system that is at least closer to that described to that system of citadels. It's definitely not ideal and not perfect in any way. It's still pretty much a statism when you talk about it, but if you compare it to what we have right now, and you look back and say like the Middle Ages, the Italy of Middle Ages, or other European parts of the Middle Ages, where every city was essentially its own little country, right? Its own principality, or it could be governed by its own little curia, or like a little committee. Not even committee. Committee is, I don't like the word committee, but a council, let's say, a council of elders, for example. That's pretty much what I mean by monarchy. A little principality is, the piece of land is still owned by a private individual who would be a prince if it's a small piece of land, or if it's a larger, then it can be king, right? And the people, the thing with this Middle Age city states is that there was no such thing as passports. There was no such thing as citizenship. People voluntarily chose to live there because it was, one of them was nicer than the other one. And if they didn't like the taxes that were imposed by the prince in that city state, they were free to move. Whereas right now, you're not free to move, because now you have essentially, like a cow, you have a stamp on yourself, right, in the form of a birth certificate and a passport, and you are a serial number to the state and nothing more. So before, everybody was free to leave the principality if they didn't like it, and right now it's different. So this is what I mean in terms of monarchy, this type of monarchy, rather than having some kind of a king, and who still uses the contemporary passport and visa system and all that stuff that completely restricts all freedoms of his constituents. But the second part of this argument is also a little bit more philosophical and goes back maybe to Plato's Republic, where in which essentially we're talking about kings and queens in terms of philosopher kings, right? So the philosopher kings, as if you remember, I mentioned about how the vast majority of people are essentially blind followers, right? And maybe the term sheep is kind of a derogatory, but at the same time, it describes it pretty clearly, right? And the sheep needs a shepherd, and that philosopher king, who is this, essentially great guy who is really experienced in all kinds of matters in business and maybe in military and in finance, and what's most important is that he's morally superior than the others. He has the ethical standards and the resolve of the soul that will basically make him a good leader, a good king. That's what I mean by this type of monarchy, where a philosopher king. So he's a shepherd. He leads the people, right? He is an example to follow. So I think that's a very important distinction here, because right now, if you take an average state anywhere in the world, the leaders that go there are essentially the complete opposite of what I just described, right? They are politicians, and right now in the political system, if you want to go to the top, you have to be the exact opposite of what I just described. You have to be sneaky, you have to be lying and cheating, and you have to, you have to sell yourself pretty much all the time. So it's yeah, it's very important, I think, to for us to get back to this feeling of kind of natural nobility, right? The natural leadership, because right now they're trying to make everybody the same, right? Men have to be women, women have to be men, and and all that stuff. But there are people who are excellent, and there are people who are not excellent, right? And the excellent people, who are really excellent, not because they say that they are, but actually recognized as excellent by other people, they have to be probably at the front, and the in the leading positions of some of these institutions, and some of these city states and citadels, right? So they, in the minds of other people, they will be looked at as kings. They don't have to bear the title of a king. They can be, the CEO of a citadel, or they can be president of a citadel, or a prince, or a king. It doesn't matter the title. What matters is the philosophical kind of the philosophical grounds upon which this guy or that guy is actually the leader, and not and not the democratic system of universal suffrage that just decided, okay, let's bribe half of the population to vote for this guy, and this guy is now the president, and and he has no merit, he has no strengths, he has nothing. He was just put there by someone else, and that's it, right? So I think the term for it is natural elite. I think this term was also described by Hans Hermann Hoppe. So that's what I'm talking about. Yeah, I hope it clears it up a little bit.
Yeah, very much. Thank you so much. So I totally agree that we need leaders. I mean, every organization needs to have kind of a structure and a mission statement, and this has to be held by a person, usually the CEO or whoever founded this organization. And as we said, this free private city is a service provider, and there's also a CEO who holds this whole mission and idea and thinks about how to make these contracts, which police to employ, which security to employ, let's say, that's maybe the better word, and also which courts to have in the back of the organization, so that they can be at hand when there's like a conflict. So I totally agree with that we need strong leaders, but not like forceful leaders that push something through without talking with the people, but compassionate leaders that are listening, that have the ideas and perspectives of everyone in their reach in mind. So everyone who is in this organization, no matter whether it's a business or whether it is this free private city. So yeah, I agree with you on this. That's very interesting. Yeah.
Yeah, thanks for the clarification, Yuri, because we just wanted to understand, like, what is your thought process behind that? So I want to wrap this up. Any final thoughts, Yuri? Where do you, where do you see this, where do you see Bitcoin evolving? Do you see like critical adoption rates in 5 to 10 years time? Do you see unexpected things evolving in the next few years?
Yeah, well, I'm starting to think in terms of no forceful adoption. So I'm not really a proponent of mass adoption in terms of, let's just do everything we can for mass adoption to happen. I think Bitcoin is self-explanatory to those people who want to see the truth behind it, and the rest will actually follow into Bitcoin, and they will be forced onto Bitcoin by the economic reality. And the economic reality will be such that fiat currencies will collapse. The stock market will collapse because it's also propped up by fake money anyway. And a lot of the value in the world will essentially disappear. And at least a lot of the fake value will disappear. A lot of the real value will be shaken off and maybe go into Bitcoin. And that's why Bitcoin will keep rising in its value. And if it cannot be measured in the United States dollars, because the United States dollars doesn't exist anymore, then it's going to be measured against something else, maybe even against gold. And that's why a lot of people are now interested in comparing Bitcoin to the gold market cap, and they measure it against gold. And simply that, the average person will only look at the number go up. What's the price today? What's the price tomorrow? Oh, the price has been growing for the past couple of years. I better just jump on Bitcoin, right? And that's it. That's the simple solution for the average person. The few who actually understand Bitcoin and want to dig deeper into it, I think will play a bigger role in what's coming. And yeah, I think we have to just find more of those people, of those people who actually are ready to spend a little more energy and effort on turning Bitcoin into turning Bitcoin into a self-fulfilling prophecy, right? Because it still needs a lot of work. It still needs lots of development. The technology is still a bit clunky. The user interface, the user experience is still a little bit clunky. People still lose money with Bitcoin. It's still not for everyone. You cannot trust it to your grandma just yet, right? It's just not there, and and it's already 11 years old, right? So it has to take a little more time, has to be a little slower. And mass adoption will follow. Like I said, it's not something that we have to rush. It's something that we have to take slowly but surely. As Parker Lewis called his series of articles, suddenly, gradually, then suddenly.
Excellent, beautiful said. Where can people find you? Where are your resources, podcasts, articles, Twitter?
Yeah, my website is degaia.co, and you can find me on Twitter, y_degaia. And my podcast is called the Citadelium. It's about Bitcoin and Citadels, and you can find it all major platforms like Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, and Anchor FM, as well as YouTube and BitChute.
Excellent. Yeah, and your article is also published on citadel21.com. I urge everyone to read that. It was an excellent article. Bitcoin is a tool for secession. Yeah, Stefanie, do you have any final thoughts so we can wrap this up? Really enjoyed this.
Actually, I have one quote that I would like to mention now, which is from this article, Bitcoin as a Tool for Secession. You are writing, the process of personal secession is the creation of a citadel of the mind, first and foremost, a fortress of light, impenetrable to the forces of darkness. I thought that it was just really a nice thought, and to stress how we have to take care of our thoughts and our consciousness. And this also made me thinking that you cannot solve the same problems with the same state of consciousness, but you have to go beyond and clear your mind and your ideas, and then you can create something new, and then you can create also a better future. So first it starts in your mind, and then it manifests in the outside. So I think this was really very nice to read.
All right. Well, thank you, both of you. Yuri, maybe we can repeat this panel discussions or any kind of discussions in the future. We really enjoyed this. You're really a big enrichment to this whole big Bitcoin space and to the intellectual space, to the evolution of Bitcoin. So thank you so much again to both of you, and talk to you soon, hopefully.
Thank you, Keyvan. Thank you, Stefanie.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.
All right. Bye-bye. Okay, Stefanie, we can wrap this up. Do you want to share your thoughts after this talk?
Yeah,
I sit here.
Yeah, I hear you. I mean, many of the things we already discussed with Titus Gebel, but it's always very nice to hear this from a different perspective. So what was new for me was this idea of monarchy, and I'm really happy that I asked to understand what he means by that. And because I pushed it in the wrong way, of course, because monarchy is usually, I mean, we didn't have so many benevolent kings. There were many that were really exploitive and didn't treat their citizens well. But the way Yuri meant this was more from a benevolent leadership kind of way. And it didn't really necessarily meant to include that this king could change the rules. So he cannot say that there are more taxes or whatever, because the rules are set in advance in this bilateral contract. So this is also what he prefers. But of course, we can have many different citadels. And for all those that still think that communism is good, I mean, they should do the experience themselves and be free to go out again. And then we hopefully, I think this is probably the best way for everyone to wake up, that the socialism communism idea is actually
exactly. That's the essence actually of liberty and free choice, right? Without without damaging anyone else, or without obstructing anyone else, without stealing from anyone else. I think everybody should have the right and and the freedom to test, to experiment, to within their own space, and create their own space of existence, of enjoyment, of whatever, of structural development. So yeah, I really loved his thought process. This structural transitioning, into a stateless world where we can eventually thrive and blossom into a really sound monetary system, which is Bitcoin, and truly liberate ourselves from this brainwashing indoctrination which the governments and the state and this whole structure has imbued upon us. So yeah, you really made some excellent points. I mean, your questions were really inspirational. Thank you so much again, Stefanie. And can repeat this. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay, Stefanie,
I
talk to you
have
soon.
something that I would like to share.
Yes.
Actually, it fits so well. So he was stressing the importance of leadership, and we have to ask ourselves, who will be the leaders who build this new future? So Markus Krall also said we need competent people, and actually it doesn't matter which education you have, because the education was mainly brainwashing. So those people that are awakened now, they can be of great service to all of humanity by educating themselves and then contributing and making a better future. And to be honest, to also hold the space for others to follow, because it is quite intense to realize the absolute intensity of deception we were groomed in. I mean, for people that I have very close, they were like so shocked to realize that the state is not benevolent. This was actually kind of a trauma. They needed to go through this. And there are even worse things that will be revealed. But it is important to know that everything needs to be revealed to see the truth and then change it. So no matter how tough the revelations will be, we just need to see it as it is and build a better future. And so big thanks to everyone who's listening. And and also big thanks for all their contribution to this positive change, because this is actually all that Bitcoin and your podcast is about. We are like focusing on change, on how to achieve that, and also to have this paradigm shift. So also thank you so much, Keivan, for your service of doing this podcast regularly.
Yeah. No, thank you so much, Stefanie, for your kind words and your really excellent, beautiful conclusion. And yeah, we are the essence. We're the seed, I think, of transformation and evolution. And it just takes time. And yes, and I need to remind myself, just be patient and work on ourselves and just, create, because, we are, at the end of the day, we are mortal. We might live 100, 120. I don't know. My grand-grandma lived 120 years old. So I think we
Wow.
need to make the best out of it. Yeah, she lived in Iran. I think she was like 118 years old, somewhere in the mountains of Iran. So yeah, and we got to make the best out of it, and but I think the strength of vision, of intention, of comprehension, and on every level you can think of, even psychological, emotionally, spiritually, is underestimated and important in the manifestation process. So thank you so much again.
You're welcome. It was my pleasure.